9:34 p.m. Over Long Island, New York, the night sky is restless. Wind gusts, low clouds, and rain streak across the glass as a Boeing 707 descends through darkness, running on fumes. Inside the cockpit, tension hangs heavy. The crew scans the instruments, fuel gauges near zero, warning lights glowing amber, needles trembling at the edge. They've been airborne for nearly 7 hours, held, diverted, and delayed, each minute burning away the last drops of fuel. Below, city lights blur through rain. The altimeter unwinds. 2,000 feet, 1,800, 1,500. The approach lights remain hidden behind sheets of mist. Suddenly, a low rumble fades into silence. One engine quits. Then another. The once steady hum of the 707 fades into a hollow wind. The cockpit fills with alarms. The crew's voices rise, calm giving way to urgency. In the cabin, the lights flicker, and the passengers realize that something is terribly wrong. Outside, darkness. No runway in sight. Only rooftops, hills, and coastline below. In the final seconds, Flight 52 is gliding, powerless, descending into the unknown. Will they make it before the last engine dies? Today, I'm going to tell you the harrowing story of Avianca Flight 52.
I am Captain Jack Mercer. What you're going to watch now is the story from the perspective of a pilot who has lived and seen a lot in 25 years of experience. Welcome aboard. So, it's January 25, 1990, and we are in Bogota, Colombia. It's a cloudy morning over El Dorado International Airport, where Avianca Flight 52, a Boeing 707-321B, prepares for a long journey to New York City. The aircraft stands at the gate, glistening under a gray sky. Who's in command? Captain Laureano Cavalletes, 51 years old, a veteran with more than 16,000 hours of flight time, 1,500 on Boeing 707. Respected, experienced, clean professional. Beside him, First Officer Mauricio Klotz, 27 years old, a bit inexperienced with 1,800 hours of flight time, only 64 on Boeing 707, which he accumulated over the last month. Flight Engineer Matias Moyano, 45 years old, managing the fuel, electrical systems, and engine parameters, has more than 10,000 hours of flight, 3,000 on Boeing 707. Each of them have flown to JFK Airport before and were used with the heavy traffic there. On board today, 149 passengers and 9 crew members, bound for John F. Kennedy International Airport. The route includes a planned stop in Medellin, where the jet will refuel and take on additional passengers before heading north across the Caribbean and up the East Coast. This is a flight Avianca operates regularly. A familiar route for the airline and its crews. But tonight, routine will turn into, well, you'll see. The Boeing 707, once the pride of long-haul aviation, is a veteran of the skies. With 4 powerful Pratt & Whitney JT3D engines, it cruises fast and high. But by 1990, the type is, let's say, aging. Its fuel planning demands good precision. So, at dispatch, fuel is carefully calculated. Trip fuel to New York, contingency fuel for weather and traffic delays, holding fuel for approach sequencing, and alternate fuel to land elsewhere if JFK closes. Every kilo of fuel matters. On this day, the local weather is clear, but they receive the information that in New York it's the opposite and there's heavy traffic there.
Why? Because a powerful winter storm sits over the New York metropolitan area, bringing gusty winds, low ceilings, and heavy inbound traffic. JFK is congested. Aircrafts are holding in racetrack patterns, one after another, waiting for approach clearance. Alternate airports like Boston and Philadelphia also face weather challenges. So, fuel planning must be sharp, Each delay eats into reserves. So the dispatcher's calculations assumed moderate holding. But my friend, real-world traffic is far worse sometimes, as you will see soon. So, it's 3:08 p.m. The ground crew clears the stand, and the Boeing 707 taxis toward the runway for the second leg of its journey. After a smooth first segment from Bogota, the aircraft is fully refueled, passengers settled, and paperwork complete. Estimated flight time, 6 hours, 20 minutes. Total fuel on board, 80,000 pounds, including reserves and alternate fuel. Weather en route is clear, but the forecast still shows strong winds and low ceilings building over New York. It's 3:10 p.m. and clearance is received. Engines at full power, the 4 Pratt & Whitney JT3D roar as the aircraft rolls down the runway. Rotation speed called, nose lifts, gear retracts, Flight 52 climbs gracefully into the pale blue sky over Antioquia. Passing 10,000 feet, checklists flow smoothly. Engine instruments green, navigation systems aligned, cabins secured. The hum of flight settles in. The 707 levels off at flight level 310, 31,000 feet. The crew adjusts power for cruise, Mach 0.80, and sets course northbound, across the Caribbean toward Jamaica, then Cuba, the Bahamas, and eventually the U.S. mainland. Passengers relax, flight attendants begin service, and the cockpit quiets into steady rhythm. Hours pass uneventfully. Over the Caribbean Sea, sunlight fades, turning the horizon orange, then deep blue. The aircraft crosses Kingston FIR, later Miami Center. Position reports are made. Fuel consumption matches plan. Systems remain nominal.
You know, this is the phase where confidence grows. No turbulence, no ATC delays, just smooth sky and steady engines. But long-haul flights can change quickly, especially when your destination is one of the busiest airspaces in the world, you know? So as they approach U.S. airspace, the weather briefing confirms deteriorating conditions around New York. Moderate turbulence, low visibility, and strong crosswinds. Still, dispatch reports JFK open, with approaches ongoing. The crew plan for runway 22L, their usual entry from the southwest. Now, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and Flight 52 is within New York Center's control area. They check in, report altitude and fuel status. Fuel remaining, approximately 12,000 pounds. Comfortable, but with little margin for extended holding. The flight's endurance, at current burn, leaves just over an hour and 15 minutes before minimum reserves. Air traffic control advises holding delays due to weather and runway congestion. They'll be vectored over Norfolk, then brought north as traffic clears. 8:15 p.m., ATC assigns holding at Norfolk VOR. The crew acknowledges, sets up the racetrack pattern, and begins looping at 14,000 feet. Outside, clouds thicken, light turbulence bumps the aircraft. For passengers, no announcement yet about delays. In the cockpit, the crew calculate burn rate. Holding consumes roughly 5,000 pounds per hour, and each additional loop eats into diversion fuel. Flight engineer Mayano monitors gauges closely, marking fuel per tank, crossfeeds, and total flow. Let me tell you, holding isn't a big deal. As long as you've not very delayed and got the fuel, it's okay. But yet, time and kerosene don't wait. Every minute in that racetrack eats away your safety net. Understand? So, after 40 minutes of holding, New York Center issues a clearance. Proceed north toward the Kennedy arrival corridor. The crew breathe a small sigh of relief. They're back on course, or so it seems. But this reprieve is short-lived. Approaching Kennedy's airspace, Flight 52 is passed between controllers, center then approach. Each sector issues new vectors, altitude changes, and speed restrictions. Headwinds now gusting 35 knots, slow ground speed, lengthening flight time. Fuel continues to dwindle. 8,000 pounds, 7,000 pounds, the cockpit mood shifts subtly. Calm professionalism tinged with quiet concern.
The captain asks for the latest weather. JFK remains open, but with extended arrival cues.
It's 8:50 p.m. and they're sequenced behind several inbound aircraft. The flight has now been airborne for nearly 6 hours. Fuel remaining? Around 6,500 pounds. Enough for one approach, maybe a short hold in alternate to Boston, if necessary. The first officer handles ATC, communicating in English. The captain manages navigation and monitors descent. The flight engineer adjusts cross-feed valves, balancing tanks to ensure no engine starvation as levels drop. The crew discusses options quietly, just growing awareness of the margin shrinking. So at this stage, everything still looks manageable. They've got the weather, the approach sequence, and the fuel for one good try. But as you'll see, my friend, the sky doesn't care about optimism. One missed signal, one misunderstood word, and the clock will run out. Stay with me. Now, 9 p.m., the Boeing 707 begins descending toward the New York area. Rain spatters the windshield, wind shear reports circulate over frequency, and approach controllers shuffle aircraft in tight succession. The passengers buckle in for landing, unaware that every mile now burns into reserves meant only for emergencies. Flight 52 presses on, closer to the city, closer to empty tanks. The storm, the traffic, and communication gaps are converging. And soon, so will their consequences. So, Flight 52 is descending through 12,000 feet, cleared to join the arrival sequence toward Kennedy. Outside, the sky is dark and turbulent, rain streaking across the windshield. Gusts roll the wings gently as the jet enters heavy clouds. Fuel remaining, 5,800 pounds. Still within legal limits, but the buffer is shrinking fast. At their current burn, they have less than 1 hour before hitting final reserve. Inside the cockpit, the crew track each pound closely. The flight engineer, Matias Moyano, reads off tank totals every few minutes, cross-feeding fuel to maintain balance. The captain, Laureano Caviedes, studies the approach chart. First Officer Mauricio Klotz, fluent in English, handles the radio, their only voice to the controllers. This is when you start thinking ahead. One approach, one chance. If anything delays, you need a plan B ready. But the airspace tonight, it's chaos. Okay, approach control juggles dozens of arrivals. Controllers issue frequent vectors, altitude changes, and speed restrictions, often rapid fire, with little time to confirm. At 9:06 p.m., the controller instructs Flight 52 to descend and maintain 11,000 feet, slow to 180 knots, and expect holding near Cameron. That's Charlie Alpha Mike Romeo November, the Kennedy arrival fix. And each new vector means extra miles, extra fuel. Each delay eats away at their safety margin.
In the cockpit, Klotz repeats instructions calmly, reading back altitudes and headings. The captain, in Spanish, asks for an update. How much fuel do we have left? The answer, around 5,000 pounds, and dropping. They've already been airborne for 6 hours and 15 minutes. Now, 9:10 p.m., the crew quietly acknowledge their situation is tightening. They've held longer than expected, flown extra miles, and burned through what should have been alternate fuel. Of course, at this point, the captain begins asking about options. Boston, the planned alternate, is far, over 180 nautical miles north. Closer options like Newark or Philadelphia are heavily congested too. Still, they hope JFK will clear soon. One approach, one landing. That's the goal, right? In the cabin, passengers start to feel the extended flight time. The seatbelt sign remains on as turbulence shakes the aircraft. Attendants secure carts, checking belts, offering reassurance. Outside, the glow of Long Island flickers through the clouds. So close, yet just out of reach, right? ATC clears Flight 52 to descend to 8,000 feet, then 6,000, sequencing them behind other arrivals. But as spacing tightens, they're asked to hold again. The captain and first officer exchange glances. Another hold means more fuel burned. Klotz radios approach, advising they're running low on fuel, but does not declare a fuel emergency. To the controller,
Running low sounds like a concern, not a crisis, Under FAA terminology, Mayday, or minimum fuel, triggers priority handling, but the phrase low on fuel carries no legal weight. But language is tricky, and when English isn't your first tongue, sometimes the words don't carry the same urgency. Now, 9:14 p.m., Flight 52 enters another holding loop. Yes, each 360-degree turn eats 300 to 400 pounds of fuel. At this rate, they have less than 45 minutes before dry tanks. The captain grows uneasy. He instructs Klotz to inform ATC again about fuel. Klotz repeats the message, "We're running low on fuel." The controller acknowledges, but does not prioritize. They remain in holding, circling through the clouds, rain pattering softly across the nose. But finally, a voice from approach, "Avianca 52, expect clearance to Kennedy shortly." Relief, right? The crew prepare for descent, briefing the ILS runway 22 left approach. They configure navigation radios, confirm altitudes, and begin checklist review. The captain exhales, tension easing slightly. The hardest part, waiting, seems over. But as they prepare for vectors, another instruction comes. Avianca 52, maintain 6,000, hold present position, expect further clearance. Okay, another hold, another 10 minutes, another 600 pounds of fuel gone.
So a new controller takes over frequency. Unfamiliar with the crew's prior reports, Flight 52 checks in, stating position and altitude. The new controller, unaware of fuel status, sequences them normally. No mention of emergency, no request for priority. The message is lost in the handoff. Inside the cockpit, the captain frowns. Fuel remaining, 4,000 pounds. At current burn, less than 40 minutes remain, including approach, landing, or go-around. Then, the crew decide no missed approach. They'll make the first landing work. But, they haven't told ATC that reality. The lights of Long Island shimmer below as the 707 holds steady at 6,000 feet. The passengers see faint glows through cloud breaks, proof that the city is near. But altitude, time, and fuel are converging fast. Soon, a simple go-around will be a huge problem. Plus, you will see that the real mistake isn't a wrong turn or a bad reading. It's silence, my friend. It's 9:22 p.m. and Flight 52 maintains 6,000 feet in holding, skimming the cloud tops. Rain sweeps across the windshield in bands, visibility fluctuating. Fuel remaining, 3,800 pounds. Each turn through the holding pattern consumes more precious fuel, 300 pounds every 5 minutes. Inside the cockpit, the flight engineer marks fuel flow with growing unease. The captain frowns at the gauges, cross-checking totals against endurance time. The first officer, busy with ATC, monitors the frequency for a call that hasn't yet come, clearance to approach. But traffic is still heavy, and approach is stretched thin. The minutes drag. From a pilot perspective, this is when instinct starts whispering. It's time to speak up, time to act. But procedure and fatigue can blur that voice, I know. And tonight, silence is burning faster than fuel. At 9:25 p.m., the captain asks again, "How much fuel?" Moyana replies, 3,500 pounds. That's about 35 minutes of endurance, total. It includes the final reserve, meant only for emergencies. They've now been airborne for 6 hours and 15 minutes. The safe margin is gone. Klotz, the first officer, radios approach again, voice tense but polite. "We're getting low on fuel." The controller acknowledges, then issues a new vector. Avianca 52, turn left heading 040, maintain 6,000. No urgency, no priority. ATC believes it's a normal advisory, not a crisis.
Finally, 9:28 p.m., approach clears Flight 52 to descend to 2,000 feet and intercept the ILS runway 22L at JFK. Relief ripples through the cockpit. After hours of holding, they're finally descending. The crew run the approach checklist. Flap set, speed reduced, gear ready. Outside, turbulence bumps the aircraft as it breaks through scattered cloud layers. Fuel,
3,200 pounds. Enough for one landing attempt. Nothing more. So, they've got one shot. And let me tell you, that's a razor's edge. You miss, you climb, you burn, and with this much fuel left, a go-around isn't just costly, it's fatal. The aircraft intercepts the localizer, the glide slope comes alive, controllers guide them step by step. Avianca 52 maintained 2000 until established, cleared ILS 22L. The captain stabilizes a descent. The runway lights flicker faintly through mist. Everything rides on this approach. Every pound of fuel, every minute of flight. But strong winds buffet the aircraft, gusts reaching 40 knots. The ILS needle dances. The crew fights to maintain course and glide path. As they near 500 feet, the aircraft drifts left of centerline, speed fluctuating in gusts. Rain pelts the windshield, visibility drops. ATC calls out, Avianca 52, wind 320 at 25, gusts 35, runway 22L cleared to land. The captain wrestles with crosswind corrections, nose yawning, wings tilting slightly. The first officer calls out speed. The engineer glances nervously at the fuel gauges. Less than 2,500 pounds now. The approach feels unstable. A sink rate warning chirps. The glide slope needle wavers. At 400 feet, the captain makes a call no one wants to make this late. Go around. Thrust levers forward, pitch up, gear remains down. Engine spool, but fuel flow spikes, burning hundreds of pounds in seconds. Now, 9:34 p.m., Avianca 52 climbs through 1,500 feet, executing the missed approach. The cockpit hums with tension, frustration, disbelief, and fatigue. ATC, hearing the go-around, vectors them for another try. Avianca 52, fly heading 040, climb and maintain 2,000. The crew complies. But in those few minutes, the fuel drops below 2,000 pounds, below safe minimums, deep into emergency territory. Still, not a single Mayday call. Do you see a problem here? Yes, right?
So the aircraft turns northeast, climbing back into the clouds. The runway fades behind them. Fuel burns faster at climb thrust. The margin is gone. Fuel remaining? 1,800 pounds. It's 9:35 p.m. and they are over Long Island, New York. Avianca Flight 52 climbs through 1,800 feet after the missed approach. The engines roar under climb thrust, cutting into the last drops of fuel. Outside, darkness swallows the horizon. Inside, the crew's focus shifts from navigation to survival. Fuel remaining, 1,600 pounds. Endurance, about 15 minutes, my friend. The captain, voice strained, orders a level off at 2,000 feet to save fuel. The flight engineer adjusts throttles carefully, monitoring flickering gauges. The fuel needles are sinking fast, each one trembling near the red line. The first officer radios New York approach. We're running out of fuel. The controller replies with another heading, unaware that running out now means empty. There is still no declaration of emergency. The aircraft is vectored away from Kennedy, set up for another turn in the pattern. Wind pushes against the wings, rain taps across the glass. Fuel, 1,400 pounds. Consumption about 120 pounds per minute. Time left, only 11 minutes, my friend. The captain frowns. His eyes move from the altimeter to the fuel panel, then to the first officer. They both know what comes next, but they're hoping for a runway before the silence. Time, 9:40 p.m. The descent begins. Approach clears them for another attempt. Avianca Flight 52, turn left heading 250, maintain 2000, cleared ILS runway 22L. Relief flickers again. They configure for approach, flaps set, gear armed. The captain exhales, muttering softly, "This must work." But descent burns fuel too. Flow increases as thrust spools up to maintain speed in descent. Fuel, 1,200 pounds.
9:42 p.m. and alarms in the cockpit. The flight engineer calls out, "We have 1,000 pounds total." The low fuel lights illuminate, amber, then red. Cross feeds open to balance remaining fuel between tanks.
The captain tightens his grip on the yoke. The first officer, voice tense, transmits again. Avianca 5-2, we're running out of fuel. ATC acknowledges with vectors, instructing them to descend further. Still, no Mayday. The misunderstanding remains. To the controller, this is a routine report. To the pilots, it's a countdown. Now, 9:44 p.m. Altitude, 1,800 feet. Fuel, less than 800 pounds. The four-engine sputters, RPM dropping, EGT cooling. Seconds later, silence. One of four gone. The flight engineer calls it, engine 4 out. The captain nods, trying to hold altitude. The thrust levers are advanced, but the gauges don't respond. Within moments, engine number 3 flames out, then number 2. The cockpit fills with a heavy stillness, the sound of rushing air and alarm tones. So, the first officer radios ATC, voice strained, clipped by static. We just lost both engines. We're descending. We're going down. Now the controller understands, but, my friend, it's too late. No vectors, no options, no runway, only terrain and darkness ahead. It's 9:45 p.m. The 707 glides silently through mist, descending over Cove Neck, Long Island. Altitude 1,200 feet, 800, 600. Fuel? Yes, 0. The captain calls for flaps. The hydraulic pressure drops. Controls stiffen. In the cabin, passengers sit frozen, some praying, others crying. The lights flicker, then dim. Outside, no runway, only scattered lights between tree lines. The ground proximity warning begins its final chant, pull up, terrain. The captain tries to stretch the glide, nose high, speed decaying. So, at 9:46 p.m., the inevitable. Boeing 707 clips treetops. The left wing strikes a ridge, and the aircraft breaks apart across a wooded hillside.
The crash is violent, but contained. The fuselage fractures into sections. 73 people perished, unfortunately. But like in a miracle, 85 survived. A miracle amid devastation. The aircraft comes to rest near suburban homes, fires burning weakly in the rain. Inside the shattered cockpit, the gauges still point to 0. The silence that followed wasn't just mechanical, it was linguistic, procedural, human. They were only 16 miles from the runway. Only 16 miles, and empty tanks. When investigators reached the wreckage near Cove Neck, they found a haunting scene. All 4 engines intact, none showing signs of fire or mechanical failure. Fuel tanks, dry. There was no mystery of machinery here. The cause wasn't hidden in metal. It was written in words. Words that never came soon enough. The NTSB investigation concluded that Avianca Flight 52 crashed because the aircraft exhausted its fuel supply after extended holding and a missed approach at JFK. The technical reason was simple: fuel starvation. But the human reasons, they ran deeper, as you will see now. The cockpit voice recorder painted a picture of a crew in growing distress, aware of their low fuel state, but failing to declare an emergency in terms controllers recognized. In U.S. airspace, the phrase Mayday or fuel emergency instantly elevates a flight to top priority. But Avianca 52's crew used non-standard phrasing: "We're running out of fuel." To ATC, that sounded like a concern, not a crisis. To the crew, it was a crisis. That gap, born of language, culture, and fatigue, was fatal.
The captain, though experienced, was fatigued after more than 7 hours of flight and delays. The first officer, responsible for communication, was hesitant to assert authority or use direct language. The cockpit gradient, a respectful silence between ranks, prevented assertive action. No one demanded an immediate diversion. No one insisted, "We're declaring an emergency now." Meanwhile, ATC, unaware of the severity, treated Flight 52 like any other inbound aircraft. They followed standard sequencing, not realizing time and fuel had run out. The missed approach sealed their fate. At 9:34 p.m., when they pushed throttles forward, they entered a climb they couldn't afford. The engines drank what little fuel remained. Without a runway ahead or fuel behind, the 707 became a glider. In the end, Avianca 52 didn't crash from weather or metal. It crashed from miscommunication, hesitation, and cultural barriers that silenced the one word that could have saved 73 lives. But keep watching, because out of this tragedy came a change that would teach pilots worldwide how to speak when seconds decide fate. The crash of Avianca Flight 52 shook the aviation world, not because of a hidden failure, but because of what it revealed about communication, training, and human understanding. Investigators didn't just see a fuel problem, they saw a systemic issue, a gap between what pilots meant and what controllers heard.
In the aftermath, the NTSB issued strong recommendations. Let me tell you the most important. First, reinforce standard phraseology worldwide. Mayday, fuel emergency, means priority, nothing less. Second, improve crew resource management, CRM. Empower every pilot, regardless of rank, to speak up decisively. Third, enhance language training, especially for non-native English speakers in international operations. Fourth, require fuel management training, emphasizing diversion decisions before reserves reach critical. So, airlines worldwide rewrote manuals, added mandatory minimum fuel callouts, and practiced fuel emergency scenarios in simulators. Controllers were trained to question any mention of low fuel, not just wait for a mayday. For passengers, the legacy was quieter but just as real. A stronger, safer system that listens harder, responds faster, and never assumes calm means safety. You know, every accident tells a story, but this one, it speaks in silence. 16 miles from the runway, and only one word missing: Mayday. So, my friend, let's never forget, clarity saves lives. That's the big lesson here. Oh yes, you're still with me. It probably means you liked this episode, right? Well, if it's true, please give me a thumbs up, and I will be very glad. Because, as always, I spent days plus days preparing today's episode for you. Did you subscribe? Why not? Come on, do it right now. I'm Captain Jack Mercer. Thanks for flying with me, and see you next.